beautiful.
Helldivers 2 is pretty much everything I wanted out of a sequel to the original. The core design philosophy for nearly everything in this game is unapologetically ripped from the first game, save for a perspective swap to third person, and it improves upon everything from its predecessor in the process. But there is still room to grow. Or there would be if the servers weren't full, but we'll get to that later. For the uninitiated, Helldivers 2 is a cooperative third-person shooter where up to 4 players undertake missions on various planets to contribute to a community-wide war metagame against the currently 2 opposing factions, the Terminids and the Automatons. Completing missions grants you XP and various currencies to unlock new weapons, equipment, yada yada blah blah blah. You know how these games work, it's all pretty self-explanatory. With that aside, the actual design of the game isn't particularly anything to write home about, although I do like that we get to name our own ship, in my case, the SES, Princess of Family Values. It's a basic, tried and true loop of play missions, buy and upgrade stuff, then go back and do it again. That's okay though, because what we are writing home about is the gameplay and just how goddamn good it is. I can't remember the last time I played a shooter that just felt this good to play. It's a game that is both nonsensical, over-the-top sci-fi action combined with elements from slower, more tactical shooters. This hybrid of gameplay styles is what makes Helldivers 2 so compelling and one of a kind. It's hard to put entirely into words without playing it yourself, but I'll try my best to at least summarize the qualities of Helldivers 2's game feel. Given it's a shooter, let's start with the weapons. Guns in this game feel fantastic. Their sounds, impact, and recoil gives a sense of weight and stopping power that makes every pull of the trigger feel satisfying, whether you're picking off enemies from afar with an assault rifle or spraying and praying a shotgun from close range. Much of this gun feel, I think, is attributed to the game's more methodical approach to aiming, accuracy, and recoil. For example, when aiming in third person, the crosshair in the center of your screen isn't actually where your bullets are going to land. This little circle right here is where your bullets are actually going. This is meant to mimic weapon movements and recoil in the first-person mode, and while it feels a bit floaty and unconventional at first, after getting used to it, it makes shooting in general feel more deliberate and calculated. Coupled with details like different weapons having multiple fire modes, and even having first-person reload animations, clearly shows the devs put a lot of care into making sure the shooting is as mint as those little after-dinner chocolates from Olive Garden. God, I love those things. But the shooting alone isn't what makes this game special. That honor goes to the stratagem system. Helldivers 2 utilizes a carryover from the first game in stratagems, which vary from airstrikes to various support weapons and equipment, to sentry turrets and so on. You can equip up to 4 stratagems to bring on missions and call them down via directional button combinations, which then prompts you to throw a grenade-like beacon to mark the position for where to drop it. Stratagems, as not to mince words, are fucking awesome. Whether it's calling down a perfectly placed airstrike or watching a well-positioned sentry single-handedly fend off an enemy advance, there is truly nothing I can think of off the top of my head that hits quite the same as stratagems hit in Helldivers. The combination of getting better at learning the command inputs to gauging where to throw the beacons and compensating for call-in time so a 500 kg bomb hits exactly where and when you want it to is just so goddamn euphoric every time. Couple this with needing to mix and match stratagems based on the mission and what your squad mates are carrying, and you've got a lot of room for experimentation. And finding the right loadout that fits your playstyle has a very personalized feel. If you couldn't tell, I'm a big fan of airstrikes, although sometimes they can be more of a liability than an asset. What drives the gameplay home, though, is the general mission structure and the enemies you fight within them. For most missions, you're dropped into a big sandbox with several primary and secondary objectives with a generous time limit to tackle said objectives in any order you see fit. The randomization of the map layouts and the placement of these objectives make every mission feel unique and can create some interesting scenarios that force players to adapt and improvise in order to succeed and, in some cases, can assist you in completing the rest of the mission. For example, sometimes you can find and reactivate an artillery cannon on the map to use later on, or some side objectives will stop a certain enemy type from spawning for the rest of the mission. There's a good amount of player agency here. You don't even have to shoot your way out of every situation either, as there are plenty of opportunities for stealth, and in some cases, is actually the smarter approach for accomplishing certain tasks or collecting resources on the map. And speaking of enemies, Helldivers 2's Helldivers 2's, oh fucking hell. Helldivers 2's currently 2 present factions are great to fight. Their sheer numbers and variety force you to be constantly striking a balance between crowd control for smaller targets and anti-armor capability for larger ones. And each enemy type has their own quirks and attributes that you'll learn to become more familiar with over time. At first, I thought chargers were so tanky that it bordered on obscene, but I learned a quick way of dealing with them is just to pop them twice in the leg with a railgun and then shoot the exposed leg with my primary. There are usually several different ways you can go about eliminating targets, even going as far as to kill them with your own hell pod on respawn.
Request approved. Deploying reinforcements.
Did I get him?
This variety of enemies and how you fight them forces you to constantly be switching between weapons, calling in stratagems, and repositioning in order to survive, and keeps things fresh on a moment-to-moment basis, especially when playing with others. Segue, bitch. Naturally, the sandbox Arrowhead crafted with Helldivers 2 is an incredible environment for cooperative play, and that's not exclusive to playing with friends either. Of course it's fun with friends, even bad games can be fun with friends. I, however, like to judge a game's co-op by how fun it is with strangers, though. And this is one of those games where I've never felt such a genuine connection to strangers since something like Left 4 Dead, Deep Rock Galactic, or even Dark Souls. I think the insane reception this game has gotten is partly as a result of this shared sense of camaraderie and its emphasis on the social aspect of multiplayer games. It's a nice break from the standard grind of, say, battle royales, because it doesn't leave the player feeling pissed off at themselves, their friends, or the game at the end of the night. Helldivers 2 and other cooperative games like it feel like a return to that social sauce I feel it's been missing from non-MMO games, and I want to see more games like it. I mean, just the fact that almost every player I've encountered, including myself, has a practically Pavlovian response to plop down a reinforced beacon whenever somebody dies tells me that people genuinely want to help each other out in this game, and I think that's pretty cool. Helldivers 2 still has some kinks to work out, however. Aside from the occasional crashes, the terrible state of the servers and matchmaking at launch, and the occasional bugs, and no, not the actual bugs in-game, haha, yes, you're very clever, shut up. There are some aspects I think could do with some attention. My main concern is that of player progression. Namely that there isn't really a whole lot to work for. All of the equipment and weapons you unlock come as is, with no upgrades or even side grades to chase for, with stratagems having nominal but not really game-changing upgrades. On one hand, it's nice for new players to not feel underpowered and removes any arbitrary grinding to tackle the higher difficulties other than just improving at the game. On the other hand, once you've unlocked everything you've wanted, this leaves many of the side objectives and points of interest on the map to be relatively pointless. The longest grind present in the game is with the free battle pass and optional shorter premium pass, which are completed by collecting medals, which are obtained mostly through mission completion. As such, this incentivizes speedrunning your way through missions as fast as possible once you've maxed out the game's other progression systems, and I don't really love that. I can't help but feel this may lead to problems down the line where players get kicked from lobbies for not being fast enough, and efficiency starts to take precedence over fun for people. This isn't a problem unique to Helldivers 2, and it's pure speculation on my part, but I still think it's something worth considering. Finally, I think the overall arsenal could do with some balance patches, particularly with the support weapons. As it stands, I feel like the railgun is a must-have on the higher difficulties. The other anti-armor options simply can't compete with how effective and versatile this thing is, and I'd like to see some buffs to bring the other support weapons up to its level. The flamethrower in particular is pathetically weak and is better at getting you or your teammates killed than the enemy. Why the hell do flamethrowers usually suck in video games anyway? Maybe I'll make a video on that. I don't know, add it to the list. Despite my concerns, Helldivers 2 still blew pretty much every expectation I had for it out of the water. It is without a doubt a must-play if you're a fan of cooperative shooters, and with content like mechs and new enemy factions coming down the pipeline, Helldivers 2 looks like it's only going to get better from here. There is so much more I could talk about with this game, but editing Slippy is gonna kill writing Slippy if I go any longer at this point, but hey, maybe we can help each other out, click them funny little buttons down below, it helps me out, and hey, maybe I make some videos a bit longer someday. Okay, this bit is stupid, I'm sorry, goodbye.